Okay, let me explain where we are in the process. Today is the last day that the Senate is going to hear Senate bills. We're going to sweep the board, the Senate board, at the end of today. And after today, the Senate is only going to hear House bills. And so that means that with SB 262, we would either have to pass it today or it would be swept. And so working with my colleagues in the Senate, Jim and I working them together, it's my conclusion, our conclusion, that this year we do not have the votes to pass 262, the anti-discrimination bill, through the Senate. So this year we had good dialogue and we got it through committee. And that's how we advance as a society. We have good dialogue on issues and we make progress. We did have good dialogue in the committee and we had progress on the bill and got it to the floor. But after working our colleagues diligently, it's not going to go forward this year. So that means that we have a lot of work to do this next year, and we will do that work. And whether it is next year, the year after, sometime in the future, we will make sure that it is against the law in Utah to discriminate in employment and housing based on sexual orientation and gender identity.
I want to thank Senator Urquhart for sponsoring the bill. As a co-sponsor, it's nice to have a rural LDS conservative on our side. I'm disappointed that there won't be a roll call vote, but that's the way it goes in politics. It doesn't change the fact that 262 has gone farther than any other legislation in protecting LGBT people in our state, and it's a breakthrough piece of legislation. The support we receive from rural legislators has been inspiring, dramatic, and I think portends for great things in the future. And I again want to thank my colleagues. The votes weren't quite, they just weren't there. I was this close with Senator Margaret Dayton. Okay, this close, but the work continues. One senator at a time, one vote at a time. We, I believe, are ultimately going to succeed. Martin Luther King said that the arc of justice is long, but it bends toward goodness. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember it exactly, but that's the point. And we saw a lot of bending of the arc this time. And I look forward to being there one day as this bill passes. And I'm confident and sure that it will.
I think I can speak for a majority of Utahns in saying that we had hoped that this bill would go to the full floor, that it would go to a floor vote, and then would move on to the House. After all, Equality Utah works on legislation, not simply to run legislation, but to pass legislation. With that said, I do think it's incredibly important to acknowledge the courageous work of Senator Urquhart and of Senator Dabakis, and also the work of literally tens of thousands of Utahns who have brought this bill to the place that it stands today. I also think it's very important to note that this is not the end. We have not been pushed back. We will continue to move forward. We will continue to do our work with our cities and our counties and the residents of Utah until we have the opportunity to secure all of the yes votes that we need to ensure that no Utahn will be discriminated against based on their sexual orientation or gender identity in these key necessities of life, employment and housing.
Do you have any questions?
Steve will take the hard ones.
How close were you?
You know, Robert, I worked the members. I did not do it with the tick sheet to see exact numbers, but we do have a ways to go.
Not something like 1 or 2 votes that could change.
No, it was not a 1 or 2 vote margin.
Was part of the issue whether or not the LDS Church was fully on board with this?
Well, you know, I know that others have talked with the LDS Church. I have not. Those conversations, no doubt, will go on this year. It, of course, would have been helpful, but, you know, again, I have not spoken with the church, so I can't speak a lot to that issue.
There was a long process over a period of a year and a half, where we met and we had cordial, wonderful discussions with the church. We really did come this close, not like Margaret Dayton this close. The pressure of the session came upon us, and we just didn't close the gap. But I suspect in the next couple of weeks we'll begin sitting down again, preparing the agenda, getting through the issues, and we'll see if we can finally come to a conclusion with the LDS Church, who has been supportive in that they didn't oppose the bill this time, which is a good thing.
Jim, what are their issues then? What are the problems that they have with this bill? It's modeled after the municipal ordinances, so what's the issue with getting it to a statewide level?
I have to vote now.
Sorry, we'll be back in a minute.
Way to go, Ben.
Maybe Brandie can fill in for a little bit.
You know, I certainly wouldn't be in any position to speak for the LDS Church. I think that one of the key pieces of moving this bill forward is continuing to engage stakeholders and continuing to listen to concerns that come from all spaces. And Jim, I don't know if you want to...
Look, I don't think it's good negotiating to sit down and say what your position and what the other position of the person that you're chatting with is. We just had tremendously warm, cordial, respectful discussion, and we just didn't get there. And I'm hopeful that we will sometime during this next year, so that we'll go with the united force next time. But we're appreciative of the church not opposing the bill, and look forward to serious discussions.
But is it, I mean, is it gender identity? Is it, what, can you say, I mean, what is it that the issue is that they cannot, that they just can't reconcile, considering it's modeled after what they supported?
As I said, when you are negotiating, you don't, it's not helpful to lay out all of the various options. We were close, we came close, we didn't quite get there this term, and we hope to next time.
Can you characterize, I guess, what your colleagues' oppositions were with this, as you had discussions with them, what they gave you as feedback as why they were in support or why they weren't, and what they'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, you know, in working with my Republican colleagues, a lot of the opposition you heard in Representative Stuart Reed's testimony in committee. And a lot of it is that they don't want special, you know, special status, special rights under the law. And so my job over this next year is to convince them that this isn't about special rights, this is about equal rights. Where we have folks in the history of our state, the history of our country, who have been discriminated against, we work to make sure that those folks are treated equally. And you know, take a look at the statute. The statute already has, all we're doing is we're adding a couple lines to an existing statute for folks who have been historically discriminated against in terms of race, national origin, age, gender. And so we're adding a couple lines, sexual orientation, gender identity, because we know that there's discrimination out there. There is significant discrimination in Utah, like in the United States. And so, you know, the funny part about this is there was a lot of testimony, and, you know, I'm hearing it from my colleagues. They say, well, we're for equal rights, but we don't. Well, then end it right there. If we're for equal rights, then let's vote for equal rights.
I found my colleagues to be supportive, and there's a process toward getting equality, and we have made a huge leap this year toward evolving, and I am very proud of the men and women who stand on that floor. I think the evolution they've made this year, over last year, and over 5 years ago is tremendous. And I have great respect for them, even those that haven't quite evolved all the way. These are thinking and responsible men and women who take this job very seriously. And I'm confident that as they become more aware of the issues, like Senator Urquhart, who wasn't the strongest ally before this year, and now look at him, he's sponsoring the bill. There's a great evolution in the hearts and in the souls of the whole country, and I think Utah can be a great standard bearer for the rest of the country. And by the way, I didn't mean to demean Senator Urquhart in any way. I think his stand is Lincoln-esque, and I'm very appreciative of his strong support on this bill and where we're going in non-discrimination.
Brandie, you mentioned you're going to keep pushing, I guess, municipalities. Is there any that are coming up that we should be on the lookout for?
There are several actually who are considering ordinance protections at this point, one being South Salt Lake, and I know that Holiday is also considering an ordinance. One thing that I think is important to distinguish at this point, though, because we've heard legislators and indeed the governor point to this, the great success that we've had in cities and counties. And I think one thing that's important to note under the protection of ordinances is that people actually have a lesser standard of protection. Indeed, they can file a complaint. Indeed, that will be investigated and there will be an assessment of a fine if the claim was meritorious. But that person actually doesn't have any opportunity to regain their employment, to be put back into their homes, or to be made whole in any way. And that is the importance of these protections. That under this statutory protection, people would be treated equally based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. And while these ordinances are crucially important, while we have seen the work of truly thousands upon thousands of Utah to achieve passage in these 17 cities and counties, it's time, I believe, for our state to pass these protections so that people who we know have been discriminated against, as Senator Urquhart has said, can have the opportunity to be made whole. So we will continue to take this work back. We will continue to provide the support to our elected officials, and we will continue to do this work until this work is done.
I was hoping Eagle Mountain was on your list. No,
They're all
no
on our
time
list.
soon. Okay.
They're all on our list. I'm sorry, Robert?
Maybe, it seems like a few years ago the concern was, is the legislature going to reverse Salt Lake City's ordinance? It seems like was not really ever seriously on the table this year. Does that speak in some ways to the progress that you referenced at the beginning?
Well, I think it does speak volumes to the progress that we've made. I think the conversation, the entire tone and tenor of the conversation has changed. I think for the first time in my professional life, and indeed my adult life in the state of Utah, I felt this year, this session, with this legislation, that we actually had more support than we had opposition. And we know that 3 out of 4 Utahns support passage of these protections. We know that a myriad of community partners, including the Synagogue Kol Ami, the NAACP, the Coalition of La Raza, the YWCA, the Inclusion Center, a myriad of social organizations support passage of this legislation, as do a myriad of businesses. It seems that we are now witnessing this moment of a coalescing of support around these kind of common sense, common values protections that a majority of Utahns will stand for. And we've seen a majority of Utahns begin to stand with us. And to that end, I think what it's going to take for us to get these protections implemented at the state level is actually more Utahns providing support to their elected officials, more Utahns stepping forward to say that they support these protections, that they would like to see our state make this stand. I think that that's the next step.
Robert, that's a very good question. I've been up here 13 years, and in those 13 years, I've seen a lot of controversial issues, and I'm a big believer in the legislative process. We take our most difficult pressing issues and we put them in the legislature. Rather than handle them out on the streets, we handle them here in these chambers. And I think that we typically come up with good resolutions. And you know, I look at some of the tough issues that I've dealt with up here. And in the 13 years while I've been up here, you look at the controversy, you look at the levels of passion over these issues of sexual orientation. And I don't know if we've ever made more progress on any other issue. I mean, you know, listen to the tenor of Brandie and Jim. You know, they're so upbeat, excited about the great progress we've made. You know, I think you're hearing some frustration from me. I don't like to run bills and lose them. You know, and that was the intent, was to pass this bill this year, and I'm frustrated that we didn't. But as I look at the progress we made, it's been amazing. I mean, you know, I'm kind of big on environmental issues, and it's something that I believe in. And you look at, you know, and when I say I believe in them, obviously I believe in having a clean environment, but I'm on the side of we need to produce things and we need to have industry, and I look at the lack of progress on a lot of those issues, and I look at, you know, even some of the big educational issues, and we just, up here, we have a lot of these issues where it's kind of intractable, the disagreements, and we have just covered so many miles in the 13 years that I have been up here. And as you were talking about the Salt Lake Ordinance, I remember the concern about that in the legislature, but we've moved from wondering whether we should stop local governments from having these ordinances to considering passing them ourselves, and actually successfully passing a bill through committee. I think that this is a lot of success, and it speaks to I think societal changes. This is something that you look along generational lines, and it's that more and more people are getting it as we go along. And so I am very optimistic as I look to the future. I look at my own arc on this, and it's something I feel a little late to the party, but I'm sure glad that I'm here. And
So are we.
And
Got a party hat for you, Senator.
and you know, I realize that there are a lot who still aren't in this place, and it might take them a while to get there, but I look forward to working with them and helping them get to this point. And just like we've done with all the other things that we've decided, we're no longer going to discriminate on that basis, and we're going to protect those folks. We'll get there. I know that we'll get there.
Senator Urquhart, then what do you say about then what is the disconnect then? If Equality Utah claims 3 out of 4 Utahns support these non-discrimination ordinances, why is it that it's just not making it past the legislature then?
You know, I think it's an educational process, Ben. It's something that society is evolving. Society clearly is moving in the direction where we're recognizing that discrimination along the lines of sexual orientation and gender identity, that this is a big problem. And it takes society, it takes legislative bodies a while to move, and I think that's all we're seeing here. But we are seeing movement in the right direction. You know, do not underestimate the importance of education in the legislative process. A lot of folks have the misperception that so much is done on the basis of deals and backslapping and all of that, and obviously there's politics in politics. That shouldn't surprise anyone. But in the political process, the main thing that wins the day is education. The more we know about an issue, the better we do. And so I know more. I think that through this session, the legislature knows more. And so I would say to anyone who is anyone concerned about this issue, work to educate us, because education does matter.
Any more?
Plan to bring it back next year, obviously?
Absolutely.
Bells on our toes, we'll be back. There is one other issue that affects this, and that is the state and the governor are so intent, and we all are, in creating economic... Senator Knudsen, you want to come say hi? You're one of the heroes in this.
Well, thank you. I'm
Come
right
on.
in the middle of a meeting.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, come on and say hi anyway. It's on non-discrimination, so, okay, we'll let it go. All right. Economic development is the critical issue for all of us, and as these national companies like Adobe and like eBay and like so many others we're attracting, that's one of the first questions they want to know as they think about relocating here is, what will the atmosphere be like? And it's been a pleasure to be able to go out a few times around the country and say to HR people, whatever bad impressions you might have about Utah, it's not true. Utah respects diversity, and your employees are going to love it here. And that becomes an issue, and we will have an opportunity next year to hoist that flagpole that says Utah and Utahns are fair, reasonable, people that don't discriminate and love and embrace diversity. So we look forward to sending that message as an economic development message as well as everything else. So thank you all very much.
Jim, just real quick, you kind of raised the point that next year we'll be able to hoist the flagpole that says we're fair and reasonable and don't discriminate. Are we hoisting a flagpole today that says we're unfair, unreasonable people that do discriminate?
No, it's a different flagpole. The flagpole that's going up now is we're evolving, and we've made a lot of progress. So that's the flagpole we're up now. Thank you.
Thanks.